Hello, I'm Joshua Hunter. I'm the head chef at the Holland and Holland Shooting Grounds. Today, I'm going to talk you through our chocolate brownie. This is a recipe that we make all the time at the grounds and it's really popular. It's very simple, but it makes just the most amazing, delicious brownie that you've ever had. First of all, I'm going to talk you through the ingredients. So we use, for the chocolate chunks in the brownie, we use Valrhona chocolate. We've got three types. We've got dark chocolate, which is 70% cocoa solids. We've got a milk caramel chocolate, and then we've got a white chocolate. I use Valrhona just because it's the very best quality, and I think that you can't beat the flavour. You can get it online. I'm going to attach in the recipe. I'm going to write some suppliers that you can buy it from. And I know Waitrose also does sell some Valrhona chocolate. Equally, you can also use any of your favourite really good quality chocolate as well, will be fine. All the quantities for this are in the recipe, which is attached. Okay, so we've got our diced butter here. Just going to go into a large bowl. We've got our sugar, caster sugar. And we've got our cocoa powder. It's really important to use a good quality cocoa powder for this. Again, we use Valrhona cocoa powder. Now we're just going to melt this down in what's known as a bain-marie. So you're going to put your bowl onto a gently simmering pan of water. Just going to turn this down. You don't want it boiling too hard. And then this is probably going to take about 15 minutes to melt. I'm just going to explain the method here to you. So because it's a brownie, you want it to be as dense as possible. Sometimes you'll see in sort of cake or brownie recipes that it involves creaming the butter and the sugar together or whipping the eggs and the sugar. That adds quite a lot of air into it. That's not really what we're going for here. We want it to be super dense and sticky and chewy, so that's why we melt the butter and the sugar and the cocoa together in this way. So in the 15 minutes, while you're gently melting your butter, your sugar and your cocoa, it's time to get your tray ready. So this is the size of the tray that we use in the restaurant. At home, the recipe that I'm attaching is half the quantity, and that will be perfect for your standard sort of 30 by 40 centimeters roasting tray that you'll have lying around at home. So I'm just going to show you how to line the tray. First of all, I've got a butter wrapper here and a little bit of soft butter, and I'm just going to basically just gently rub around the outside of the tray, and all that's going to do is that's going to make sure that your paper is going to stick. And then I've got some non-stick baking parchment here. So I've just cut a piece that's like a little bit bigger than the tray itself, and then I'm just going to cut down on the corners. And then that's all just going to fold in to the edges nicely. And then if you've got any bits that are overhanging, you just want to trim it so you don't have too much excess paper. And then I'm just going to take the same little bit of butter and just lightly grease the inside of the tray. Like so. That's perfect. So now I'm just going to get the chocolate chunks ready. You need to cut these down into smaller pieces. You can either do this by hand, or you could also just very quickly just pulse it in a food processor. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to carefully just chop through like so. being careful to keep your fingers out the way. And you're just left with nice chunks around that size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to either just put these into a container like this, or onto a tray would be fine. And then I'm going to pop all of these into the freezer for about 15 minutes. That way, when they go into the mix, they're going to stay as nice, chunky pieces of chocolate, and they're not just going to melt into the batter straight away. You can see that your butter, cocoa and sugar are all melting down into a nice, sticky mess. It's going to look a little bit grainy at this stage. That's perfectly okay. That's what you want. Just make sure you give it a stir every so often, because you don't want it to catch on the sides. Be careful with your fingers, because there's going to be steam coming up around the outside of the bottle. Okay, so as you can see, this is all melted down, and I'm just going to let it sit for 5 minutes because you don't want it to be too hot when you put your eggs in. Okay, so next I've got 7 whole large eggs. These I've been keeping in the fridge. It's important to have them cold because you don't want them to cook when they go into your warm butter mix. So all I'm going to do is I'm just one by one going to whisk them in. And then, as you'll see, as the eggs break down into the mix, it's just going to go really nice and smooth and glossy, and it will get rid of all that grainy texture, like so. Now it's time to add the flour in. As you can see, it's quite a small amount of flour for the recipe. I quite like that because it means that it's not too cakey. Again, you've just got this super luxurious, dark, chocolatey brownie. So I'm going to put the flour through a sieve. Just tap your flour into the sieve like so, and then just tap it against your hand, and all the flour is just going to go through like that. And then I'm just going to take a spatula and just gently fold in the flour. Making sure that you don't have any lumps. And then I'm just going to take my chunks of chocolate, which have been in the freezer, and I'm going to put that straight in like this, and then just fold the whole thing together. This is just the most chocolatey thing you will ever eat. And I'm just going to put a tiny little pinch of salt in as well. That just really helps to balance the flavour of the sweetness of the chocolate. All of this mix is now going to go into our tray like so. Making sure that you scrape all the sides down so you don't waste any of the mix. And just use your spatula to gently just push the mix into the edges, so you've got a nice flat layer. And you can see you've got your lovely little chunks of chocolate. And now we're going to take this and we're going to put it into the oven at 160 on a fan oven. It's going to take about 30 to 35 minutes. It really depends on your oven, it can vary. I'll show you when it's cooked so you can know for the signs that it's cooked properly. Okay, so it's taken just over half an hour and the brownies are now ready. As I said, it really varies depending on what oven you've got. So the best way to know that it's ready is you can see that it's just starting to crack around the outside. It's got a really nice sort of crust formed over the top. And if you take a clean hand and you just gently push down, you'll see that there's a little bit of resistance and the brownies are nice and firm. And the other important way to check is just, you can take a little cake tester like this, or you could just use a small sharp knife. Just pop it in, and you want it to be coming out nice and clean like that. As the brownie cools, the butter is going to set and the chocolate's going to set the whole thing up. So you want it a little bit gooey in the middle, that's fine, but not so gooey that it's going to run everywhere when you cut it. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're just going to let this cool down in the tray. You don't want to move it until it's cooled down because it's just going to break. So I'd say it's going to take 45 minutes to an hour for this to cool down completely, at which point then we can cut up the brownie. We've allowed this to chill all the way down to room temperature, and now it's just time to cut it up. So I'm just going to very carefully lift it out of the tray onto the chopping board. And then the best knife to use for this is a really sharp serrated knife. And you just want to carefully cut straight down the middle. And then I'm just going to move this gently apart. And you can see that it's still a little bit gooey, but nicely set. I'm just going to portion up one piece. And there we go. And as you can see, it's super gooey, really nice and soft. You've still got those lovely chunks of chocolate just running through. It's really the best brownie you're ever going to eat.